Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel, and if you are returning, thank you as always for being here. Super excited today because I am doing a nautical collaboration with my friend Annie from Indiana Jones. So let's go ahead and get right on into it. DIY number one. All right, I have a canvas from the Dollar Tree as well as a disposable tray, also from the Dollar Tree. It came in a pack of two. I have a bunch of acrylic paints that I pulled out of my stash, and I'll be showing you those colors in a little bit. And then I have some just regular paper cups out of my pantry, as well as my paint pour medium that I picked up from Walmart. So I am going to, first of all, go ahead and set up my canvas on top of four of these cups. This is going to allow for all of the paint to drip off as we do our paint pouring, and it won't actually have the project sitting in the excess paint. So got that set. Now I'm going to go ahead and get my colors out. I have natural buff, skin tone. This one is surfboard, ceramic coat. This is another ceramic coat, Lost Lagoon, and then True Blue by Folk Art. These are all plaid products. This one is from Walmart. That might actually be a plaid product as well, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But I'm going to go ahead and get everything mixed. The pour paint medium requires, well, the instructions say to do a 50-50 mix with your paint color. My particular acrylic paints are rather thick, so I did not do a 50-50 mix. I just put in enough to get it to the point where I thought it was a good consistency. This second paint color that I just used, it was a little on the thick side, so I did go ahead and add in some more medium, and I just kept going until I had it to the consistency that I was looking for. I did, in hindsight, wish that I had added a little bit of water to these paints as well, and after I worked with these here, I did ultimately do that for the next round. But as you can see, I'm just pouring them out over my canvas where I want them. And you can see they're not moving real fast. And I've got this sped up almost 3 times normal speed. So I definitely needed them to be a little bit more liquidy than they came out. But it all worked out in the end. Now, I do recommend wearing gloves for this. I didn't have any gloves, so I'm not wearing gloves, but it definitely gets messy. So definitely recommend wearing gloves if you're going to do paint pouring. Now you can see this is really, really pretty thick. So I'm giving it a bit of a hand with my finger, making sure that everything is coming down over the edges of the canvas so that it's all kind of cohesive, so to speak. And I'm going to be pouring on a little bit extra paint along those edges in a moment as well. But this was such a fun project. I have not done a whole lot of paint pouring before. I think I tried it once with a vase, actually a couple of vases, and that project didn't turn out the way I had envisioned. And I've always wanted to come back and do actual paint pouring on canvas. I'm trying to remember if I had done that before, and if I did, forgive me, because I'm just not remembering that project. It must have made a great impression on me. So I'm going to go with no, that this is my first attempt. But yeah, I don't recall. So at any, oh, you know what? I did it with a kit. I did it with a Five Below kit. That's what it was. And it was, yeah, this one is much more successful. Let's just put it that way. All right. So here I'm coming in with my blues. You can see I did add water to these. They are much more the consistency that I was looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and run these around. Now you'll notice my beige colors are not moving at all now, and that is because I did let it sit for about half hour, 45 minutes to let it dry a little bit before I added in my blues. I'm going to come back and add a little bit more of this lighter color, and I'm just going to keep moving it around, and I'm just going to keep doing that until I get it to a place that I'm happy with it. So more of the blues. And I love watching this and the way that the paint moves. It's so cool and satisfying to me. I don't know what it is, but I'm just making sure that I'm getting all of the corners covered. I want to make sure that the entire canvas is covered. Now, I did try to come in with my heat gun to see if I could get the paint to move that way a little bit. It was great for popping air bubbles, but it really didn't move the paint. So then I grabbed a straw and I am blowing through the straw onto the paint. Now, if you choose to do this, just be aware that you can get lightheaded pretty quickly if you're not careful. So just be conscious of that and take your time with it and make sure that you are breathing the way that you need to breathe, not to have any kind of an issue. But I'm just going to continue to come through here. And at one point I did actually somehow manage to blow hard enough that my blue, dark blue, ended up on my sand. So I'm just going to come in and scoop that out with my little tool, and it actually picked up. I noticed once if I just tapped on top of it, it actually pulled up the paint completely fine. So it was really easy to get that cleaned up. Coming back in with some more of that medium colored blue. I think that one was the Lost Lagoon. What a fun color name. And adding in a little bit more of the true blue. And you can use whatever colors you want. I was going for a beach kind of scene here, so that's why I'm using the blues and the sand colors, obviously, because this is a nautical video. So I was going for waves and beach. You'll have to let me know ultimately if you think I achieved that. Keeping in mind that this was my very first attempt to do something like this, other than that Five Below kit, which was probably not a huge success to begin with. But at any rate, now I'm coming in with some white. I did not show that to you before because this was, I forgot to bring it out, quite honestly. I'd been trying to figure out what I was going to do with that. But I had mixed it up the same as the others with the paint, pour medium, a little bit of water. In hindsight, I wish I had added more water because I wish that the white had been more transparent, or perhaps I should have added less paint to the pouring medium. I'm wondering if maybe that would have helped my white to be a little bit more transparent, because I wanted to create the idea of foam. But you know what? Again, I'm going to give myself a little bit of grace, and I am going to just acknowledge that this is the first time that I'm attempting this. So we can't all be expert paint pourers the first time we try something, right? But at any rate, I'm going to continue to bring in a little bit more white, get this moving a little bit more. And then once I have it where I want it, I'm going to come in with a brush and just kind of dipple the sand area. Now, you don't have to do that. I just decided I thought it would be fun to have a little bit of texture on my sand part. But otherwise, this is done. Let me know what you think. And as I mentioned before, this is a collaboration with my friend Annie from Indiana Jones. She is awesome. You guys, if you are not familiar with Annie, you are going to want to run to her channel, check it out. She is one of the most creative people I've ever met in my life. Give her some love. Let her know I sent you. Her link is in my description box. DIY number 2. All right. This is like a bonus project, okay? So I had all of this leftover paint from that paint pouring project. Not so much of the sand tones, but I had a lot of the blues and the white, and I didn't want to waste the paint. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna grab another canvas out of my stash. This is also from the Dollar Tree. This is a smaller canvas. I'm trying to remember what the size of these are. I think it's larger than a 5x, maybe a 6x8. And I think the other one was an 8x10. That's my guess, but don't hold me to that because my memory is shot. But at any rate, I'm going to use more of a traditional paint pour method here. And this is the first time I'm trying this, but I've got my white pour paint there, and I'm going to pour in the other colors into my white paint cup. So I'm going to start with the lightest of my blues. I'm going to just pour all that in. Once that's all in, I'm going to pour in my medium color blue. And then I'm going to go ahead and pour in my true blue. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab those cups from the sand colored paints that I wasn't going to be using. I'm going to use those to support my canvas. Now, I did not have an extra tray. I do have a piece of cards poster board underneath my work surface here, so I decided I'd already made a mess of it. I was just going to use that as my catch-all, but normally I would put a tray of some sort underneath this. But I'm going to just pour out my paint and I'm going to drag it through. You're going to see as I kind of go back and forth here, the colors coming through. I think this is the coolest thing in the world. And I was just going back and forth at first. And then I started bringing it out to the sides a little bit more here and there. And yeah, so that was pretty much the extent of that. And once I had all of the paint out of my cup, and I guess I thought maybe it would be satisfying for you to watch all of this. But once I have it all out of my cup, I'm going to go ahead and start swooping it around. Swooping? I don't know if that's the right word, but at any rate, I'm just going to angle the palette. And this one I am doing in real time. So you can see this is actually how the paint moves. And I just think it is the coolest thing to watch. I don't know about you. Leave me a comment. Let me know. Do you like watching the paint kind of moving all over the surface here? I just think it is so fun and so cool. But I'm making sure that I'm getting it to each of my corners. I want to make sure that I get everything covered before I start having a lot of paint fly off the side of the canvas and I don't then have enough to cover everything. So I'm just being mindful of that. And also keeping an eye on the picture, so to speak, the design that's kind of unfolding before my eyes. So I'm holding it from underneath, trying to keep myself as clean as possible because, again, I'm not wearing gloves. Do recommend the gloves. But look at how cool this is. And I'm just going to keep manipulating it a little bit until I get the design to where I think I want it. And then I'll be able to set it aside and let it dry. And yeah, guys, I think I might actually like this one better than the original one that I mixed the paints up for. But you'll have to leave me a comment and let me know which one you like better because this one is done. DIY number 3. All right, I have seashells and a starfish, some craft wood from the Dollar Tree, my jute cord from Walmart that clearly I need to get more of. And this is a couple of canvases that I picked up from Five Below. It was a 2-pack, and I believe these are 11 by 14. 11 by 14. So I had gotten them out, but I went ahead and set them aside because I want to get my wood all set first. Little ladybug, thank you for the cleanup. Cut these all down to, I'm trying to remember how long they were. I think it was 8 inches. Yes, 8 inches. My craft wood was originally 18 inches in length, and I have, so I got 2 pieces out of each of these. But I was just showing you that I was using my Provincial blue as well as my Adirondack white chalk paints, getting all of my wood pieces set up. I'm going to be doing 6 of them in the blue and 4 of them with the white. But first I'm just sanding off those edges where I had sanded them. I probably should have done that before I vacuumed up the sawdust, but whatever works. So I'm using a baby wipe. You've probably seen me do this in the past because I just want to use this more as a stain than a heavy coat of paint. I want these to look weathered. This is supposed to be beachy, right? So looking weathered, I want the wood grain to show through. And so that's what I opted to do for the white. Now for the blue, I'm going to do the same thing, but first I'm just hitting it up with the residue, whatever's left on my baby wipe. That's what I'm using right now. So you can see there's a difference. It's knocking down that yellow in the wood a little bit, but it's not like white, right? And now I'm coming in, I'm using the same baby wipe with the blue. And this does not need to be perfect. Imperfection is our friend with this because, again, I want it to look weathered. I want it to look rustic, beachy. So I am not trying to make these perfect, and they're not going to have complete coverage. If you prefer complete coverage, you do you. If you want different colors, absolutely go for it. This was actually something that was inspired by, well, the first one's actually a dupe, right? And then the second one was inspired by, because I'll explain that in a little bit. But I set those aside to dry, and now I'm going to go ahead and prepare my canvases. So I wanted to get the, or I should say my frames. I wanted to get the canvases off of the frames because I want to use just the wood frame part. And as I did this, I was thinking, you know what, I really don't want those staples on there. So I decided ultimately that it was going to be easier for me to just take the staples off immediately. So I grabbed my little flathead screwdriver and I was using that to leverage the staples out. And then I came back in with my needle nose pliers. I was able to just pull those right out of there. So it takes a little bit of effort, but for me, it's worth it. So I've got both of my frames set and ready, and now I've got my jute cord, and I'm just showing you here that if you don't have a drill or don't want to mess with drilling holes, you can certainly tie this here. But in the picture that I was inspired by, or the one that I was duping, they had it going through the frame and tied in knots. So I'm just looking for a drill bit that I can use that's going to be about the same width as my jute cord. So I'm getting that all hooked up in my drill, and I'm just trying to figure out if I can, I want to make sure that my drill holes are straight, right? And so I'm trying to figure out how I can make that happen by keeping the drill as straight as possible. So first of all, I'm just going to mark these off. I'm finding the center. So here you can see this is 14 inches. I marked it at 7. And now I'm just lining these up, and I'm going to mark, I'm using the original measured mark to mark the other. And I flip the one over, mark that, flip the other one over. Catch what I'm doing here? So I only had to measure once, but I was able to mark all of them. So measuring the other one, this was 11 inches. So I'm going to mark it off at about 5.5. Once I mark it, I just double check. Sorry, I'm a little out of frame there, but I did double check. And then I went ahead and did the same thing, marking everything by flipping it over. I think you get the idea of what I'm doing here. So once I had everything marked, I was, again, trying to figure out how to get these to the right height so that I could leave the drill on the table and just drill right into it. So I want to make sure that I'm not going to drill anywhere near my hand. So I've got it all lined up here, and I'm able to just push it in from the other side. And that worked like a charm. So I went ahead and I continued to do that for all 8 holes total, right? So 4 holes on each frame, and that worked just well, just perfectly well. And then I went ahead and sanded up the little holes because the wood did splinter a little bit here and there, but nothing serious. And now I am using my little baby wipe technique with the white paint, just giving this a light coat of the paint so that it's matching up with other pieces. And now these are all dry, and I am going to glue them together with my Gorilla wood glue. So it looked like I was putting a lot on there. I was actually scraping a lot of it away. You don't need a lot of wood glue, and in fact, if you put on too much, it's just going to ooze out between your pieces, and it just kind of gets a little bit messy. I mean, it's easy enough to wipe away, but I don't know. I try to just avoid having it ooze to begin with. And I do this on parchment because I find that it doesn't stick to the parchment paper. Unlike other, like if you had craft paper underneath it, you basically would end up with craft paper on the back of your project. So that's what I did. Now these, obviously, clearly, magic of YouTube, these are already dry. They had been set aside for a while to dry, and now I'm going to go ahead and get my frames ready for them. So I've got my jute cord. I am kind of twisting it through the hole. It was a little wide in this particular section of the cord, so I had to get creative there. At some points I did use some hot glue to put on the tip. Here I'm just trying to find a thinner part of the jute cord that might be able to, get through there a little bit easier. There are a lot of different things that you can do, but clearly here I went ahead and I put a little bit of the hot glue on there. I probably could have made these holes a little bit larger and then it would have been a little bit easier, but I was also conscious of the fact that I was going to be tying knots on to keep them in place, and I didn't want the holes to be too big because then my knots wouldn't hold either. So I've struggled with it a little bit here and there because even with that hot glue, then it made my jute cord a little bit too wide, so I was kind of like having to mess with it. But ultimately, I got it all thread through, and I did that on each of the pieces. So going across like this, and then I'll show you in a second how I did it going the opposite direction. So it kind of made it look like a window frame, but I'm just tying that off, making sure my knot is really nice and tight, and then trimming off the excess. Pulled that other one through and just made sure that it was as tight going across the frame as possible because that's what's going to be supporting our decoration piece. So those wooden slats as well as the embellishments that we're going to use. So going ahead and getting this strung, and I'm only going to show you on this one, and then I will do the other one off camera. But again, just getting it all strung across, trimming that off, making sure it's long enough that I can get it through there, and then also tie the knot in it. My little hole was a little bit closed off for me, so I just used, I think it was a pencil or something that I used to just make sure my hole was open. Here I go with my little hot glue trick again and threading that through, and that time it worked well for me. So again, just pulling that nice and taut, tying the knot off, and there we're good for our embellishments. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that all of my stuff is ready there. Okay, so I've got our little, I don't know what to even call this at this point. It's, yeah, I mean, it's, yeah. Our wood slats, I don't know. But anyway, I realized that it was best to flip it upside down and measure it that way. I tried putting some hot glue in the middle of it. And then as I'm doing this, I'm also thinking, you know what? Hot glue doesn't always really hold well to wood. So I need another, system of support with this one. So I pulled out my staple gun. Sorry about my head there. Here I'm just measuring, making sure everything is nice and even and centered. But I'm going to go ahead and pull out my staple gun in a second, and I'm just going to staple it in 2 places on either side of each cord. Hopefully you get what I mean because you can see what I'm doing here. And then I just knocked those staples in with my hammer, and apparently I'm moving everything on earth. While I do that, I didn't even realize I had done that. And now I'm going to apply my little starfish friend to the center of this. I think this is so sweet. I love this. I'm going to be giving these to my friend Rebecca, who loves the beach and everything beachy. But I love that so much. So now I'm going to go ahead, as I promised, I did the other one off camera, and now I'm doing the shells. So the inspiration picture had one giant shell in the middle. I don't have a single giant shell, so I'm using multiple shells, and I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do this, how many shells I wanted, how many rows, should I, do it the way that I had it? Should I, do 3 rows of the shells, 3 rows of 3, so with the 9. And as I watch this back, I kind of like that better than what I ultimately did, but I ultimately ended up just doing what I showed you originally with the 7 seashells. But let me know what you would do. I mean, if without having one giant shell to put in the center of this, would you do what I did? But I'm applying some hot glue to the inside edges of the shells because I don't want it to be seen from the outside, right? So I'm going to show you close up here on the inside edges because I know when I flip it over and put it on my piece, that glue is going to ooze down onto the wood, and it worked like a charm. But here they are. Let me know what you think. And now it's time for a shout out timeout. Sweet, Valerie. These are so nice. Thank you for sharing. And beautiful, Heather. These are just so sweet. I love those carrots. Oh my goodness. And cute, Kathy. Everybody has been so busy with these projects. They're adorable. Great, Sarah. Love the bee. Oh my gosh. And nice, Janet. You know what? 4th of July is right around the corner. These are fantastic. I would love to give you a shout out as well. If you have interest, just send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 4. All right, I have a couple of pieces of fabric from the Dollar Tree. These are clearly nautical, and I also have these tags from the Dollar Tree as well. I'm gonna go ahead and prep them. I was trying to decide, oh, I'm gonna take the little hanger off too to work with this, and then I'm gonna set it aside, and I will be using that again later. But I was trying to decide whether to work with the back side of these or the front side, and ultimately I did decide to use the front side because the fabric is just a little sheer. You can kind of see there. And I was worried that the brown would just kind of muddy it up. So using my matte Mod Podge, and I'm going to give this a really good coat of the Mod Podge, and then I will go ahead and place my fabric on it. Now, my sweet friends, crafting cousins, Kay and Trish from Crafting Cousins. I believe they have told me that they use fabric all the time with Mod Podge, and I don't think I've ever used fabric with Mod Podge. I usually use paper of some sort. So I was excited to do this, and you know what? It worked so nicely. It doesn't wrinkle, it's nice and smooth. I love it. But now I'm just using my X-Acto knife to kind of free up that hole because I will want to be able to hang these again. So setting that aside to dry, and I'm going to go ahead and get my second one ready. Again, just a good coat of the Mod Podge, placing the fabric down, just making sure it's nice and lined up, and then I'm going to free up that hole. I went ahead and trimmed off the excess fabric. I'm not going all the way to the edge because I'm going to be using my rotary cutter on that in a little while. It's just going to make it a nice, really clean cut right up against the edge of the tags. So, but right now I'm going to just let them dry for a little bit. Now I have these cute little turtle cutouts. They are wood cutouts from the Dollar Tree. Pulling out a bunch of my paint markers. I want to try and figure out which colors to use, so I'm just kind of marking up my little parchment paper on the side there so I can figure out what is going to look nice with the tags, with the fabric that I've put on there. I want something that's going to complement. So I've got this really pale green color here. It's almost like a mint green. And I'm just gonna give a base coat to all of my little turtles. I decided to go with 3 little turtles. So once I've got that on there, I came in with this darker green, and I'm going to try to kind of create the shell, kind of the appearance of the design on the tortoise shell or turtle shell. And then I came in with the blue and kind of filled that in. Now, when I did it this way, it kind of bled a little bit. And at first I was like, oh, I wish it hadn't bled so much. But I did it a different way for the second and third turtles, and you'll see that in a second. So you can see on the left, it kind of bled, right? So I went ahead and I filled in entirely with the green on the second and third turtle. Just kind of made an oval there to fill in the back of the turtle. And then I'm going to be coming in a moment and using the blue. And it gave much crisper lines. Ultimately, I think I might have liked it better with the bleeding, but you'll have to tell me what you think in just a second. So coming in now with my blue, this is like a marine blue color, and just outlining that, and then I will make my little shapes. And I wanted to make sure it was about the same shape as what I had done on the first turtle, so that's why I'm doing it the way that I am, as opposed to like making a star shape, like a complete star shape. I don't know if that makes sense, um, but yeah, I kind of liked the bleeding better. I don't know. They're all cute anyway. But now I have a seahorse cutout. This is also from the Dollar Tree. It came in a pack of, I want to say it was like 8 of them because it's part of a garland that you can create. But I'm just going to use one of them, and I'm going to use the same colors that I just used on my turtle because I want them all to complement each other. So I came in with that mint color. Now I am coming through with the green, the darker green, I should say, and then I'll come in with the blue as well. And I was wishing that this one might bleed a little bit more. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if maybe if I had sprayed it with some water, if maybe it would have bled a little bit, because I just wished that the colors had melded together a little bit more than they're doing. I mean, it's still super cute, but I don't know. I felt like it was a little stripey, if you know what I mean. But I came in with that blue. And I don't know if I actually showed it later, but I did actually ultimately end up giving him a little eye. I used a black paint marker to create his eye. But before I did that, I'm adding a little bit more of the blue to the edges. So you can see there on his little belly and along his, do you call that a mane or a spine? I don't know. But here I've got my rotary cutter on my self-healing mat, and you can see it makes such a smooth cut, and you can run it right along the edge of that tag, right? And it just makes a really precise, clean cut. And I never could have achieved that with a pair of scissors. So it's fantastic. So I did that with the other one as well. Now I'm going to try and figure out how I want to piece them together. So I've got both of the tags lined up, and I'm going to put my little pieces on here to see how I want my turtles laid out. And now you can see the top right turtle is the one that had the bleeding, and the other two were kind of clean. I don't know. But so you can kind of see the difference there. I kind of like the one that bled. You know, something to keep in mind for the future. But ultimately I decided I liked the blue on top of the white as opposed to the other way around. I'm just placing everything the way I want it. Then I'm going to go ahead and put my hanger on there. I'm going to thread it through the seahorse first, and then I'll thread it back through the tags, and I will tie it off. That's just making sure that everything is all lined up, because I am going to glue these tags together, but I want to make sure that my holes are where they need to be for my hanger to hang properly. So I'm getting this done first, and then I will get everything glued down and finalized, so to speak. So this is where I want it. Placing the little turtles again. They're so cute. Taking those 2 off, lifting this up so that I keep my place, so to speak, and I don't put glue where it's not needed. And I used a hefty amount of glue there, making sure that it's where it needs to be. And that's nice and secure. And then I'm just gonna secure down my little turtles on the tags, and this is gonna be all done. Let me know what you think of this one. DIY number 5. All right, I have these 2 frames, one of which I had used before for a project last year, and the other one is just for my stash, and it was the same exact kind of frame, and I need 2 of the same for this particular project. And I know I want to take all of those little doodads out of the frames but ultimately I was like, you know what, I will do that after I do my first step with the glass, because I really need to do that first. But it had all of this extra stuff in there because these frames are kind of deep. But anyway, I got the glass out and now I'm going to be using silicone caulking, my isopropyl alcohol, and I have some sand. I also have this, oh my goodness, mica powder by Artisan. I picked out a really pretty blue color. I'm cleaning up my glass first with the alcohol. And now I have a piece of foam core board that I thought was a great idea to use for this. Turns out it really was too thick. There are instructions for this on a blog that I found, and I will make sure I link the blog in my description box. But I should have followed the instructions. It specifically said 2 millimeters. Foam core board is definitely thicker than 2 millimeters, probably at least twice as thick. So I did ultimately run into some issues with the final product, but I'm going to share all of my mistakes with you so that if you attempt this, you will have greater success. So I've added the caulking to 3 sides. I've got my foam core board there. I've sandwiched my glass together. And just be careful if you do this, you guys, you don't want to cut yourself on the glass. I was being very careful and did not cut myself. So you just want to be very careful because the glass sometimes can be very sharp. I'm putting down a piece of board on top of it and then weighting it down with some of my craft supplies. And I'm going to let that dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and prep my frame. So I took all of the little doodads out, and then the second frame, I went ahead and gave it a dry brush of my white Adirondack chalk paint so that it would match the other one that I had already worked with. So the next day, actually, I guess it was that evening, I pulled out my foam core board, and this is all ready to go. I'm trying to get it standing up there. I started out with my black sand, and I'm looking at it and it was really, really coarse. Like, I was worried that it was not going to work. And then I was like, oh no, I wonder if my white sand is the same way. It was not. It was more like sand. So I opted not to use the black. I've got the white, I'm putting it on a piece of parchment paper, tucking my parchment paper between the glass panes and pouring it into my piece here. Adding some more of the white sand, and now to this one I'm adding the mica powder. I did end up adding a little bit more mica powder by itself, so you can kind of see there was like smudges of it on the glass. And now I'm adding in salt water. Oh, sorry, you can probably hear Sammy's chain rattling in the back, his collar. Salt water, and then my isopropyl alcohol, 70% alcohol. Hopefully I'm saying that word right, isopropyl, but it calls for a 50-50 mix of the salt water and the alcohol. It did not tell me how much salt to put in the water, so I just kind of played it by ear. And my understanding is that this prevents algae from growing inside of your piece with the water being in there. So between the alcohol and the salt, I guess it keeps it the way that it needs to be. So I dried that all off with my paper towel, and I'm coming back in with my silicone to seal this last side. Now, this is where I started realizing, you know what? I should have followed the instructions. It should have been the 2 millimeters and not whatever this ended up being, because I was afraid my silicone caulk was just going to fall down inside. So I'm kind of going back and forth like I'm icing a cake to make sure that it's got support on either side. And then I'm just going to have to take off the excess caulking later. So it worked ultimately. But then I also was realizing that my water settled more with the sand before, like after I sealed it up. I should have given it more time to settle, because I ended up with a lot more air in there than I needed. And that ends up being a challenge as well. I used my sharp blade to cut off all of the excess silicone very carefully. Now I'm just checking to make sure it's all going to fit in the frames before I start piecing it together. Now, if you recall, I had pulled out a bunch of extra stuff from the frames because it was a deep set frame, almost like a mini shadow box, kind of. So I'm adding back in some foam core board to kind of help make sure that the glass is secure in there. I probably only should have added it to one side of the piece because ultimately my frames didn't go all the way back together. So I ended up using some cord that I'll show you in a minute. But in the end, it all worked out fine. So I pieced in all of my little foam core board pieces that I had cut, and I got those hot glued in, and then I went ahead and I started piecing together my project here. So once I made sure that it was all going to fit, I went ahead and used hot glue around the entire edge. I did this on both of the frames one at a time. So I did the bottom one, and you're going to see me put the glass in, and then I added hot glue all the way around the edge of the other frame and just set it down on top. And I can't remember if I show you all of that, so that's why I'm kind of telling you what I did. Yeah, apparently I showed you all of it. So just running a bead of hot glue all the way around and making sure that it's going to be nice and sealed up against the glass. So flip that over, get it on there, and just pressing it together. And then I went ahead, so you can see that gap. So I took some of this, I think it's actually macrame cord, and I just ran a bead of glue along the edges of the frame, and I'm just holding it together in place until the glue dries sufficiently, or cools, excuse me, sufficiently around the cord. And I just wrap that around the entire piece, and I'm just pressing it down in so that I make sure that the cord isn't going to hinder its ability to stand up by itself. Tucking in the end and making sure that that is nice and secured, gluing that little end down, and that is pretty much it, you guys. But you can see I've got too much air in the piece, so and the frames are the glass frames are too far apart, so the sand falls too quickly. But let me know what you think. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. Please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and leave me a comment. I really would love to know what you think of the projects today. And remember to go and check out Annie's video. The link to her video is in my description box. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing that and coming back and visiting with me again sometime soon. But until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.